I recently learned something that really surprised me. Apparently, inheritance disputes are the second most common reason for legal disputes, right after divorces. When a family member dies and someone is not as generously provided for in the will as they had hoped, it can quickly lead to a huge dispute. Kenoyer is also in trouble over such a matter, so she takes the whole thing into her own hands. In order for her to get her share of the cake, someone else has to die. When Stephen Edward Riley Jr. checked his emails one day, he could hardly believe his eyes. Where spam and advertising messages usually pile up, one email in his inbox stood out. It was from a lawyer informing Stephen of the death of a distant relative and that he was the sole heir to the estate. The fortune that Stephen Riley Jr. is now to inherit amounts to a whopping $30 million. Stephen has been working as a construction worker for decades. A tough, back-breaking job that is not always paid fairly. And $30 million would completely change Stephen's life. He immediately comes up with a plan. He will use the money to buy a few properties, as security. And he finally wants to start his own business and no longer work for others. Running his own auto repair shop has always been Stephen's dream, and now it suddenly seems within reach. He will divide the rest of the fortune between himself and his 5 sons from previous relationships. Stephen also tells his girlfriend Ina Kenoyer about his plans. Stephen and Ina have been together for more than 10 years, so they might as well be married, at least as far as Ina is concerned. Stephen, on the other hand, seems to have different priorities. Whenever he talks about the upcoming inheritance, he never mentions Ina, probably for good reason. Stephen confided in his son Ryan at the time. He feels increasingly unhappy and annoyed in his relationship with Ina. Ina hasn't had a permanent job for a long time and apparently has no great desire to change the situation. Stephen gradually has no more strength to continue supporting his girlfriend. But after 10 years, this decision to separate is somehow always more difficult, no matter how bleak the relationship may be. So Stephen waits for now. First of all, he plans to collect his inheritance anyway. But Stephen will die before he sees a single dollar. September 3rd, 2023 is the day. Stephen has made an appointment with the lawyer to clarify the formalities surrounding the outstanding inheritance of millions. The lawyer is scheduled to arrive at Minot Airport in the morning. Stephen is on his way to pick him up there. But that day, Stephen notices that something is wrong. He feels really, really bad. When the lawyer doesn't show up, Stephen drives back home empty-handed. He can't wait any longer. He needs to rest. 2 days later, on September 5th, Stephen is even worse. His girlfriend Ina decides to call an ambulance. Stephen is taken to a nearby hospital, but passes away later that same day at the age of 51.
My husband's really sick. He got heat stroke yesterday, and now he's not waking up. And come on, wake up!
What's the phone number you're calling from?
I don't have a phone number. It's a phone that never got finished getting set up. Come on, babe. I've been trying everything. Ice, water.
Okay, but he is breathing?
Yes, he's snoring. He won't talk to me anymore. He won't look at me. He won't open his eyes.
Nope. I've got help on the way. Just keep an eye on his breathing. If anything changes with his breathing, tell me immediately.
At first, it is difficult to determine the cause of death. Ine told the paramedics that he had been suffering from heat stroke, but Stephen's medical condition does not really fit with that, so an autopsy is arranged immediately, and it delivers a surprising result. Stephen Riley Jr. was poisoned with antifreeze. This is used in cooling systems or windshield washer systems in cars. Antifreeze contains ethylene glycol. This alone is not toxic, but when it breaks down in the body, it causes extreme damage. The blood becomes over-acidified and the organs, especially the kidneys, can no longer function properly. However, because the fluid has a rather sweet taste, you don't necessarily realize that you are taking something life-threatening. The police quickly assume that someone has secretly spiked the antifreeze with it. And the first suspect is his girlfriend, Kenoyer. It is not necessarily to her advantage that she is less concerned with mourning and more with Stephen's inheritance of millions. Because now that Stephen is dead, the 30 million should actually go to her. Or so Ina imagines. After all, she was Stephen's common-law wife. If you're wondering what that is, don't worry. It's probably what some of the investigating police officers also wondered, at a loss. The concept of common-law marriage only exists in 9 US states. A common-law wife would be a woman who has a legally recognized relationship with her partner without having formally married. Under certain conditions, a relationship of this kind is then recognized as essentially marriage-like. For example, if you live together for a certain long period of time, present yourself to others as a married couple and manage the finances of a couple jointly. Well, Ina Kenoyer sees herself as a common-law wife, and as Stephen's quasi-wife, she would be next in line to inherit. It's just a shame that this concept doesn't exist in the legal sense in her home state of North Dakota. And even more annoying that the supposed inheritance of millions doesn't exist either. On September 3rd, Stephen Riley Jr. still made it to the airport. However, he waited there in vain. The lawyer who wanted to sign over $30 million of his inheritance to him never showed up. And there is a specific reason for this, because he doesn't even exist. Apparently, Stephen fell for an online scam. He desperately wanted to believe that the story about a long-lost relative who had died and left him millions was true. And that was despite the fact that the lawyer never sent him the personal details of the supposed relative or proof of the fortune. Unfortunately, the person responsible for this scam could never be found. But Stephen is not the only one who fell for this scam. His girlfriend Ina also fell for it. And because she also wanted a piece of this fortune, but Stephen wanted to spend it all on himself and his sons, she came up with a plan. So while Stephen is probably getting worse by the hour on that September 3rd, he still waits in vain for the lawyer at the airport the whole time. And back at home, his condition is rapidly deteriorating. Friends also notice this and urge Ina to take Stephen to the hospital. She declines, saying that Stephen has simply had a little too much to drink and is suffering from heat stroke. He just needs to rest. On the morning of September 5th, a concerned friend calls Ina again to ask how Stephen is doing. Ina replies that she took Stephen to the emergency room that morning. But that's not true at all. Ina doesn't take him to the emergency room until hours later that afternoon. By then, he's no longer conscious. He's still flown by helicopter to a specialist clinic, but the doctors can no longer do anything for him. It is immediately clear to the police who is responsible for this. A well-emptied bottle of antifreeze is found in Stephen and Ina's garage. In the house, there is also a cup and a beer bottle with residue of the same. But that's not all the incriminating evidence. Because even though Ina presented herself as Stephen's common-law wife, she doesn't actually seem to like him that much. Back in 2021, she posted a picture of Stephen on Facebook with the caption, "I hope you get everything you deserve. We don't know exactly what Ina meant by that or what made her so angry. Now that she's suspected of murdering her boyfriend, that post doesn't exactly make her look in a good light. On top of that, she even tells the investigating police officers about the supposed inheritance. She says that she wants to get everything related to the money settled quickly so that she can divide the 30 million between herself and Stephen's youngest son. When the police explained to her that she would not even be entitled to the money under state law, even if the sum really existed, she gets angry. And the police are increasingly certain that Ina took the life of her friend. Ina Kenoyer nevertheless continues to try to talk her way out of it. She maintains that Stephen died of heat stroke. When confronted with the results of the toxicological report, she says that Stephen must have smoked a cigarette that had fallen into the antifreeze. This is not only a rather desperate lie, but also nonsense. In addition, Ina let the cat out of the bag during an interrogation and admitted to having prepared an iced tea for Stephen on September 3rd. And as already mentioned, antifreeze does taste sweet at first. Mixed into an iced tea, Stephen would probably never have realized that his girlfriend was trying to poison him. A friend of Ina's also told the police that Ina had already dumped a lot of Stephen's things in front of their shared house on September 3rd. It looked as if she wanted to get rid of them. And Ina is said to have repeatedly said that Stephen would surely leave her as soon as he had inherited the money. Ina Kenoyer is arrested for the murder of her boyfriend Stephen Riley Jr. and eventually charged with the crime. When it becomes clear to her that she will not be able to get out of it, Ina finally admits her guilt. Ina Kenoyer is found guilty of poisoning Stephen Riley Jr. She receives a prison sentence of 25 years. She ended the life of the man she had been in a committed relationship with for more than 10 years, and all for a sum of $30 million that never existed. In court, Stephen's sister Stephanie makes a statement. She addresses the following words to her brother's girlfriend. Regardless of what your final sentence will be, it will be too lenient for you. As the families of probably all victims think, the punishment should fit the crime. Lucky for you, the Department of Corrections doesn't put antifreeze in iced tea. The case of Stephen Riley Jr. is truly curious and above all, really sad. At least Ina got a conviction and a sentence. But Stephen leaves behind a large family. His own parents, his siblings, his 5 sons, 12 nieces and nephews. They will all have to do without Stephen. And all because of an inheritance that never existed. Feel free to write your thoughts on the case in the comments. I'm looking forward to reading from you. By the way, you can easily support Insolito this way. Otherwise, there is not much more to say. I wish you a good morning, noon or evening, or whenever you watch the video, and hope to see you again in the next video. Until then. Ciao, guys.